Patreon supporters, it is Danielle here, and I have Berlyn with me today, guys. Woo woo! Berlyn, are you ready to jump into a podcast?
I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's my first podcast, so.
We're breaking her podcast cherry?
Yeah?
Is that a thing?
I don't know. I'll take it. Sure.
Sure. It's just what's gonna happen. I'm so excited. Guys, we're gonna talk about boundaries on this episode, and we're definitely gonna be talking about Harry Potter, so that's just gonna happen. But I'm really excited. So Patreon supporters, you have to give Berlyn a really nice, warm welcome to the Ringer community, because she's one of those really good people that you should follow, know, stalk, do all the things with in a healthy, good, creative sort of way, not in a creepy way, y'all. But yeah. So Berlyn, are you ready to record a podcast? Wait. Where are you? You're in Ohio, right?
I am. I'm in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, so I'm recording here. We're nighttime here, but you're nighttime there, right? Are you in Eastern time? Okay.
Yeah, we're the same time frame.
I don't know. Geography, man. Not my thing. I do weddings.
We live like 5 hours away from each other.
No, it's more than that. Because I live on the eastern side of Pennsylvania.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
It takes like 6 hours just to drive to Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah. And Pittsburgh is like 3 hours away from me. So.
See?
All right. Fine.
You win. Told you. I win. Yay! Yeah. Oh, also Patreon supporters, I have a cold, so you're probably going to be seeing me blowing my nose on the occasion. You're welcome. Maybe I'll just mute that part for our people watching the video, because that's gross. Oh, so Berlyn, do you ever do a neti pot when your nose is really stuffed?
Yes, and my husband thinks they're disgusting, but I definitely do.
I swear by them. I've done a ton today, and just before we hopped on to record, I had it sitting out, and there was still water in it, and I was like, oh, I'll just use this real quick just to like give a quick flush, and it was really cold water, and I was like,
no,
not pleasant. So I don't advise that.
That's awful, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm hopped up on the Dayquil, so... You're welcome, y'all. All right, so you ready to record? I'm going to jump in.
Really quick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I need to shut off my notifications on my iMac.
Idea.
And I'm not 100% sure how to do that.
Oh, top right corner, that like ... line thing next to the Siri. Cooper, if you don't stop running around, you're going to be on the podcast, and you don't want to be on the podcast. See. Did you find it?
It says notifications, but it's not giving me like an option to turn them off.
Scroll down so that you get all the way to the top, and you should get the night shift and do not disturb.
Got it. That's what I needed. Because it just
myself into do not disturb.
As soon as we started on, then I got a bunch of text messages, and I was like, "Ooh, that's not a good recipe for a podcast."
I couldn't hear it, so that's good. But it's probably distracting. I have to shut off all the things, because when I see an email come through, I start getting a little itchy. That if I don't read it and respond it, I get nervous. So I just turn it off so that I can deal with it later. But yeah, okay. All right. So we're going to jump right in. My dog is going to stop running through the house. Mr. Cooper, don't. Okay. All right. So Dan always goes, and we're live in 5, 4. I miss Dan. Hey everybody, I have got Berlyn Martin here with me today, and I am so excited because we're going to be talking about boundaries. Now, before we jump into our topic, Berlyn is somebody that I met, we met at a wedding planner workshop actually earlier this year in February that took place in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And we basically sat next to each other, and was it the first thing that we talked about? Was it Harry Potter, or did we wait a little bit?
I feel like it really was the first thing.
Yeah. So I know you have a Harry Potter tattoo, right? I think
Two of them.
It started there, and then it was just like instant best friendship, because anybody who loves Harry Potter, I love, and she's in the wedding world, so that's really cool too. But we have this really similar approach to weddings, but we have our differences too. But I just love the approach she has and the different things that she's bringing to the industry. So outside of being a huge Harry Potter fan and a fellow Hufflepuff, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I may or may not be able to confirm or deny that she has recently done a styled shoot slightly with a theme of a Hufflepuff.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. They were like, what colors should we use? And I was like, probably yellow and black.
Probably. I mean, just throwing things out there, but that's just what I think we should do. That's awesome. Okay, so Berlyn, tell us about yourself to start.
Well, I am a wedding planner that serves the Columbus, Ohio and Central Ohio area. And I really believe in weddings that people can be themselves and create a wedding that they want instead of having to do what they're told to do. And I mean, there's obviously certain things that we value above others. So, guest experience is huge and making sure that you're taking care of the people who are traveling so far to be with you. But in the end, you're throwing this big party to celebrate this huge life event. And so we're just interested in kicking that off for you. And I have a really no BS approach to wedding planning. Like, I believe in pretty things and that not all pretty things have to be practical, but at the same time, like, I don't want you walking into your marriage in a ton of debt. So we try and do as practical a wedding as possible, but in a fun way. So organized and fun.
I told you, Ringers, that's something that we talk about a lot on this podcast. And I know you guys are going to like Berlyn because she talks about that stuff too, where, it's not always about having all the things for the sake of having all the things, especially if you don't even know why you're having all the things, if they don't mean anything to you. It's just, like she said, it's just BS. So that's why I absolutely adore this girl. So I'm really excited. So we're talking about, on this episode, we're going to be talking about boundaries. And this is one of those topics that I think is not just important as a couple, but it's just important as like a downright human being, because I don't know anybody that doesn't struggle with this to some degree in their life, in their personal life, in their work life, in their family life. So I'm really kind of excited to jump in with this. And I think I want to probably start at the very easy question of, why? Why is it so important to set boundaries?
I mean, just in general for your own mental sanity.
Right.
But yeah, no, honestly, like, people can't survive, and there's no way. Like, you have boundaries at work, you have boundaries with your friends, some people have boundaries with their friends, but in general, like, we create rules so that we know how to function and that we have a way to function and get through basic tasks. And it's the same thing with your wedding. You have to go in with a plan. And setting those boundaries is part of making a good plan and being able to execute your wedding well.
Right. And it's one of those things where you have you have so many forces coming at you that it is so easy to get pulled into a million different directions, right? It is there are vendors wanting things, there are family wanting things, there's your guests wanting things, there's you as a couple wanting things. And if you don't start somewhere, right? Like, you have to establish these boundaries somewhere so that you have some foundation to work off of. Then to me, you're just setting yourself up for a very, very stressful situation.
And it's like, as soon as you get engaged and you've got that ring on your finger, or you've given that ring to someone else, it's like there's a sign over your head that says, please give me your unsolicited opinion about how I should do my wedding day. And
it's so you neon and blinking. It's just like pointing at you. Yes.
Every person you meet on the street, every coworker and every aunt who's ever had someone get married is like, let me tell you about the one time we did this. And so you have to have a response to that, because otherwise you're going to get strong-armed out of the wedding you want.
Right. And I think where it needs to start is setting the boundaries with you as a couple, right? You need to present as a united front, because as soon as you start to split ways or lose your footing from each other, that's where things get really tricky and really dicey, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So one of the things, as we were talking about and brainstorming things for this episode, Berlyn, you had mentioned about how, you and your future partner, well, your future spouse, I should say, your current partner, should really join forces and just present as a united front to just any and all opposition.
Yeah. I mean, you're getting married, right? You're becoming one and you're joining your lives. So now's a good time to start. Support your partner, and when they have issues that they're facing, or, the two of you really want to make sure that you're both getting what you want out of this day and you're starting your marriage on the right foot. So be a support team.
Right. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily need to agree on everything. It's not coming from a place of that. It's coming from a place of understanding what the other person's priorities are, coming together on those priorities to have the event that represents and supports the type of event you want to have for your wedding day. It doesn't mean that you both have to love and have top priority for having the best food or having the best band or whatever it is. It just needs to have that understanding of what you each want and what you each want specific to this event. And that really starts with communication, just making sure that you're together. I can't stress it enough, just being a united front on things, because it is so easy to let somebody kind of drive a wedge in between you for that, right?
Yeah. And it's really easy because I don't know about you and your experience, but sometimes I have couples where both people are really involved, but a lot of times one of them takes the lead on making the decisions. And so it is really important. I do think even if you're the person who doesn't necessarily care about a lot of the details, is that you're still involved and you're still supporting your partner in making those decisions, so that when something does come up that you do care about, then you kind of know where everything else is and you can make an informed decision and support your partner and your own needs.
Right, exactly. And that's just like relationship advice, right? Like that's what we need to be for our partners. We need to make sure that we're communicating, we're supporting one another so that we can navigate this life together in a way that's healthy and helpful and lovely as possible, obviously. I mean, we're going to fight about stuff, right? Because the towels should just be folded a certain way, you guys. That's just me. Anyway, so let's, I feel like your like immediate family is often one of the biggest triggers in when we kind of have to navigate this world of families with the boundary of money and then the boundary of influence. Can we talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys talk about this a lot on this podcast about setting the budget early and talking about it often.
And that icky, sticky, awful conversation, guys.
Yeah. Money is a rough topic. Nobody likes to talk about it, but it's what's going to drive a lot of your decision-making process and what you can and can't afford. So that needs to be discussed early. And then two, give and take. People, sometimes family members want influence on things, or they assume automatically that if they're contributing money, then they're going to have a say over something. So if mom and dad say, okay, we're going to cover catering, and mom decides that she wants salmon instead of beef, are you going to have to do that? I mean, we need to have that conversation early. Do you care? Do you care if mom chooses the menu? And if you don't care, then sure, let her do it and, agree that that's a section that she can have influence in. But if you do care about making all of the decisions, then you need to know exactly where everybody else stands, and they need to know that too.
Right.
Because if you think mom has no influence and mom thinks she has a ton of influence, then you're going to run into issues later.
Right. And this is one of those things where it doesn't need to be an abrasive or a defensive conversation. This conversation can and needs to come from a place of respect, open-mindedness, and understanding, because if you come at it with a open heart, chances are high, and obviously not everybody is as lucky to be in this situation, but chances are high you're going to be met with that same open heart, right? If you come into the situation ready to make compromises, but just get to the root of what we all want, then it's not uncommon that other person is going to do it too. But I also recognize that sometimes we have personalities in our life that are just going to push, right? And all I can say is I'm sending good juju to you guys, because it's hard to maintain your level of grace and respect when you're in those situations. But ringers, I know you can do it because you're awesome people, and hang in there and vent to, you can send me an email. I'll listen to you because I know it's tough. But I think let's talk about... Stop saying let's talk about. So what happens when, let's say, your partner's family is kind of pushing on things? Do you recommend that you're the person that kind of steps up in that situation? Or do you recommend that the person whose family it is the one who should sort of step up in that situation?
So it goes back to the united front. bit a little bit for me. So first, make sure that you and your partner are on the same page, because if you're going to bat for something, you want to make sure it's what you're both comfortable with. And if it's your family pushing, you should be dealing with them. If it's their family pushing, they should be dealing with them. Because, and I keep saying mom, but it could literally be anybody in the family. Because if a parent is coming to you guys saying you need to do X, Y, Z, and you step in and you're defiant, and, you know, it's a lot easier to perceive disrespect from somebody that you don't intimately love and have like been with for 18 plus years, you know, literally like I've raised you. So, but because, you know, you don't want to be the evil stepdaughter or the evil stepson who's stepping in to ruin their kid's wedding. Like that's not what you want to do. So you both want to present that united front and just let each other handle their own families. And if somebody isn't, you know, like some people have problems standing up to their parents because it's a respect thing. And so I totally get that. But if you aren't comfortable standing up, it's okay to have the other person with you and like be there as a support system. Right. Do it together, but you should be the one doing the talking that says, look, mom and dad, look, aunt and uncle, whoever, grandma and grandpa, this is what we want. This is how we feel, but we want to be respectful of your wishes too.
Right. This is an area where I feel like I witness and hear about a lot of tension that comes from this, where one person in the relationship will sort of stand up and say, hey, parent, we kind of don't want that. But then that parent goes back to their kid in the relationship and says, well, your so-and-so said that he or she doesn't want that. And then that partner goes, oh, well, it's okay. We'll just do whatever you want. As soon as you lose that connection and that united frontness, new word, that's where basically things start hitting the fan, if you're catching what I'm dropping. Because as soon as you lose that, that's to me is where I see a lot of hurt feelings and where I see a lot of fights stem from, right?
Mm-hmm. The undermining. Yeah. Because you might not be meaning to, but you are undermining your partner, and you never, ever want to do that while you're wedding planning.
Just even ever in life, guys, we just don't want to do that to our partners, right? Of all people in our circle of trust, right? Our partner should be that one person that we're able to like look to and trust and be able to tell us privately when like, hey, maybe we should really think about this or challenge us in those situations. But public facing should be like, yes, whatever they say. Well, maybe not. I don't know. But I think for the most part, right?
It's the pick your battles argument. I think like if somebody's clearly like if it's a moral issue, it's clearly wrong, then obviously we're going to stand up and say something. But if it's just, you know, it's the don't air your dirty laundry rule is my thing on social media, you know, whatever in family, because think about it this way. Your family has known you for years and they will always stand behind you. And so if you come to the table and you start undermining your spouse, or if you're frustrated with them and you're venting and things like that, then they automatically want to be defensive of you and they want to support you in that instance. And so it's whether you want it to or not, it can tarnish the way they see your future spouse.
Right.
And so it's really important because you're going to live tens and tens of years with this person and you want to make sure that it's copacetic. So just if it's not something that's like a make or break, really moral issue, support your spouse.
100%. That should be the subtext of this episode, really, of this podcast. Support your spouse. Okay, so how about let's talk about these really fun scenarios where couples are kind of going through the wedding and then they sort of start getting hit. As you said, they sort of get that big old flashing sign over their head that's like, hey, I'm planning a wedding. I'm planning a wedding. Tell me everything you know about planning a wedding, because apparently that's what the sign over my head says. You know, the kind of questions where someone's like, hey, so can I be a bridesmaid? Right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. How do you usually handle that? Because I have my formula, but I'm kind of curious what you do.
I just tell them to lie and change the subject. I don't know. Actually.
Fair.
Yeah. Well, here, let's talk through what you do. Because I do whatever you do.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, I mean, my first rule is like, don't commit to anything right off the bat. Because initially, when you first get engaged, apparently people think that you plan everything in the first like week. So they're going to be
24 hours. It's just done, right?
Yeah. So when's the date? What are your bridesmaids' dress colors? Can I be a bridesmaid? All this other stuff. So I like to warn my couples to come up with a stock answer. And the formula is stock answer, don't make a commitment, flip the conversation.
Love it.
So, can I be a bridesmaid? Oh my God, I'm so honored. Thank you so much for thinking of us. We haven't made any decisions yet, but you'll be the first to know. Have you ever been in a wedding before? And then let them go off on their tangent and drink your mimosa and let them talk, because that's all they want to do.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's all they want to do. They just want to talk about a wedding that they've been in and tell you exactly what you should be doing. And then you can either listen or not. It's up to you.
Yeah.
But at least the pressure's off of you.
I think that's part of it, right? Is as you are kind of, as you change your status on Facebook from in a relationship to engaged, it will just automatically come with all these questions. And I think how you handle it, like we said before, you can't control anybody else in this world, but you can control how you handle certain things. And I think how you handle it will set yourself up for the best bit of success. So like Berlyn just said, if you're like just letting them talk, just so that they can get it out of their system, and inside you're like, yeah, I'm not gonna take that advice. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that either. Oh, that's not gonna do that either. That's definitely not what we want. But in your head, you're just kind of going through that and make it a fun little thing and let them share their story. Great. You know what I mean? You let them talk. You are probably a good friend to them, and all is well. You don't need to then take that and shoulder everything that they said and carry that with you throughout the rest of the day and let it affect you, right? You can't sort of go back and say like, oh, Karen, do you know Karen is asking to be a bridesmaid, and like now she's in my head, and what am I going to do? Just let Karen talk. You know what I mean? It's always Karen, isn't it? Always.
It is always
Sorry,
Karen.
Karens.
I mean, most of the time, all they want to do is the reason you get the questions is because people want to be involved in your life. Mm-hmm. They care, and they don't know what else to ask you about. Mm-hmm. Because as we get older, like there's a how's work? How's your family? Oh my God, you're getting married. Mm-hmm. So that's something they can ask about. They can take an interest in, and they just want to be heard and feel included.
Right. And I think I love your recipe for, what did you say? You kind of give them a stock answer. Mm-hmm. And then you said you tell them not to commit. Yep. And then you kind of flip the script and kind of ask them something about either their own experience or whatever it might be. So what would you say to, am I invited to your wedding? It's so new, or we're just enjoying being engaged right now. And we haven't even sat down and figured out our guest list yet. But I don't even know, like, as for the flip the script on that one is usually I'd just be like, I haven't figured out my guest list yet. So no. Ooh, what about, we're still trying to figure out a guest list with our families. You know how family can be. Speaking of, how's so-and-so? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of just segue, let them talk about their own crazy family member or whatever it might be. Maybe that would be a good one. I think another one that people will sort of really challenge a couple with is the "Can I bring my kids?" question.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you're choosing to do an adult-only reception where there really aren't children invited, though we love them and think they're great, how would you recommend sort of navigating that? Because that feels like a tough one to like not commit to almost.
Yeah, that one's a tough one, but that's where, and we're going to circle back to this united front thing like a million times, because if you guys sit down and you're like, oh yeah, well, so-and-so's kids are fine, but I don't want anybody else's there. You need to know that, and you need to have that boundary and set that originally so that the two of you are answering questions in the same way. So if you don't know whether or not you're going to have kids yet and you haven't sat down and talked to your spouse about that, you can just be honest with that person and say, we really haven't sat down and talked about it. We're not sure what the venue is going to allow us to do yet, but we'll let you know when the invitations go out. And then this is a really great spot to enlist, if you do decide not to have children, it's a really great spot to enlist friends and family to delicately deliver that message. So if you've got aunts and moms and dads and brothers and sisters that are interested in helping with the wedding in some way, they can sometimes deliver that message to family members a little bit easier than you can.
100%. It is so nice to be able to like lean on these people in your life to help spread things like that. Like that's where you can, if you have a parent or somebody in your life who really wants to help, that's a good area to say like, Mom, I need your help with Aunt so-and-so. She wants to bring her grandkids. We really don't want them there. Can you help me out? And this is where she's going to be like, yes, I got you, ideally. But there's also options that you can give people too. Like instead of just giving them, can I bring my kids? No, I don't like your kids, right? Like nobody wants to hear that. And we don't want your kids at our wedding. That doesn't feel good. You can sort of flip it in a way that's beneficial to them. You could just say like, you know what? We just want to make it a great celebratory event for adults. We know being a parent is really tough, so we want to make it a night out. Maybe you've set up some sort of babysitting options, or you can recommend a babysitter, or they can bring the babysitter, or hey, we totally get it if you're just not able to make it and you're just going to celebrate with us from afar. We totally get it. We'll catch up after the wedding. We'll make sure we make a plan to catch up with the kiddos after the wedding, and we'll tell you all about it once we get back from our honeymoon and things settle down, right? That way they don't feel excluded from anything or like they can't be part of it. You're giving them options and you're making it clear that no, the kids can't come, right?
We love you, but you can't. And I can't tell you how many parents, like I had a woman walk up to me at one of my last weddings. She goes, I don't think you even understand, but I haven't been in a dress with a drink in my hand without a toddler on my leg in about 2 years. And she was just so happy and excited. And she's like, I'm so glad this was a no kids wedding. And sometimes people don't realize how much they need that until after they're there.
Right. And that's part of having kids though. When you sort of make the decision to expand your family, bring kiddos into the world, it comes with certain sacrifices that maybe you're not able to do all the things that pre-kids you weren't able to do. It's a temporary chapter of life, but ultimately that's a chapter of life you're in. When I was growing up, my mom and dad made it a rule that if kids weren't invited to the wedding, that as a family, we chose not to go because they wanted us all to be there to celebrate together. And they still send best wishes, gifts, cards. Like it wasn't a negative thing that they came from. It was this very positive, like, we love you, but we don't like, I've never had a babysitter ever in my life. I was always just with my parents or my grandparents. So it's just one of those things where, and therapy is a whole other thing for that. Let me just tell you that right now. But it's one of those things where you sort of just make that decision and you go from there, but you don't hold it against either person for whatever decision that they choose to make, as long as it comes from a good place, right?
Yeah. And if you do get those negative feelings, because there are some people, people exist, and people are fun sometimes, but if you do get those negative feelings, that's one of those places where you just have to take solace in the boundary. Yes. It's okay, because this is what you want. This is your day. And yes, it is for 120 of your closest friends too. But in the end, this is your day to celebrate, and it's only one day. Mm-hmm. And if that's what makes or break your friendship or your relationship, then we have bigger problems. So, like Danielle said, just offer the option if you want to, offer alternatives, but don't feel bad because you want this.
Right. In the same sense that they shouldn't feel bad because they want to bring their kids, right? Like it's a totally fair, you each have your preferences for it. But because you are the one hosting the event, you're the one that gets to make that final decision. And like she said, if the other person doesn't like that, you can't control anything about how they handle themselves. You can only bring what you want, and what you can to the table, right? So if you handle that conversation with grace and respect and dignity, and they don't handle it well, there's nothing else you could have done outside of acquiesce to whatever it is that they want. But then you're opening up an entire can of worms for all those other mamas and dads that you did say no to, and they said, okay, cool. But then what happens is they see other kids at the wedding and they're going, well, wait, I thought there wasn't kids invited, and wait, is it just my kids that they don't like? And that's terrible too. So as much as possible, I say always stand your ground. I think outside of, I know some couples make the exception for those that are their flower girl or ring bearer. I've definitely seen that, and I kind of get that as the exception. But I think it's one of those things. And usually if they're little enough, they kind of peace out before really dinner even starts. They kind of go on their way and find a room where they can watch the watch a movie, watch Frozen or something.
I guess it's try and make a boundary that makes sense from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So don't say, okay, well, I'm only inviting kids that are under the age of 13, over the age of 8, and are directly related to me by blood. Like, if someone looks and says, oh, they're in the wedding party versus they're not in the wedding party, that makes sense to an outside viewer. That's easy to explain. There you go. But if you have to get into like caveats,
Yeah, it's you just kind of opening yourself up for kind of hurt feelings and awkward conversations. You're not avoiding the awkward conversation by saying yes to one person is what it comes down to.
Exactly.
I think the other awkward conversation sometimes happens where people assume that they get a +1, right? Where you sent out an invitation to Mr. John Smith and Mr. John Smith responded back with 2 people coming to the wedding as opposed to the one Mr. John Smith that you invited.
Yeah. Let me just pull out my little soapbox here on that one.
She's getting on it. All right, go ahead.
I have a couple, but this is one of them that we're all grown people, and I don't think that you owe somebody a super in-depth explanation about why somebody that you didn't invite to your wedding isn't invited to your wedding. So the first step, and always deliver any of these boundaries with compassion, right? You have to, like Danielle said, you have to come at it with a heart of love and compassion, because that's how you would want a message delivered to you. So the first thing is like, hey, we got your RSVP. I noticed that you added another +1. Unfortunately, we are not able to accommodate anybody who wasn't listed on the invitation, but we have you seated next to fill in the blank of this person that they know that they're comfortable with. So we hope that you're still going to be able to come and celebrate with us. And just leave it at that. No is a complete sentence, but delivering it with compassion makes it go down a little easier. And hopefully they get the message and they're like, they'll probably be a little bit embarrassed, honestly. Like anytime somebody gets caught breaking a rule of etiquette like that, they kind of get this, oh, shoot. But, just delivering that and just very matter of factly, like, we cannot accommodate that. I'm really sorry. Here's what we have done to make you comfortable in this situation we can accommodate, and just move on. And they're going to come or they're not going to come, but that's not up to you.
Right. And there are certain like good rules to follow when it comes to who you should and shouldn't give a +1 to, right?
Yes.
So what are they? If a person is dating somebody long-term, that long-term partner should be invited as well, whether you really know them or not. Also, obviously if they're married, that's kind of unfortunately a given, whether you do or don't like the spouse.
Right.
Is there any other scenarios where the person should really get a +1?
I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Right.
Really? Yeah.
I could make certain arguments like maybe you should automatically give that to your like siblings or something, but I don't even know.
Sometimes wedding party gets a +1.
Yeah, but I feel like for +1s for the wedding party, they are really your partner in a wedding party. Wait, hold on. Let me think about that. When you're like a bridesmaid or a groomsman, your significant other, you're not with them most of the day. Like you're separated for most of the time. So if anything, a stranger +1, that person is going to feel very estranged all day maybe they're just going to have a grand old time drinking and eating appetizers and dancing on the dance floor. But for the most part, they're going to feel more awkward than anything, I would argue. Plus, if you sit them with you at your head table or your king's table, and you don't even know this person, that's really weird. So, yeah. So obviously we want to make sure that we're being mindful of people that if they do have a spouse, long-term partner, then they should get a +1, as long as you can accommodate that. And if you shouldn't, I would just say really reanalyze whether or not that duo should be invited at all, right? But for those that just do that, yeah, like you said, and even start off with a place of, oh my gosh, we got your RSVP. We are so excited you can come. Yes. And then do exactly what Berlyn said. But make sure you say, if this changes your RSVP, we totally understand. Just please let us know, right? Because you want to let them know that, like, we see you, ain't going to happen, but we get it if then you don't want to come. So you tell us. Ball's in your court, bruh. Johnny, it's just kind of what it is. But it's tricky. And I'm telling you guys, people will make this assumption on you. And it is tough. and it's one of those things you have to navigate, but once you kind of just talk with them, get it over with, it gets better.
It's the same thing with family that invite uninvited guests. Like, you find out that you've gone over this guest list painstakingly with both sets of parents, and then you find out down the line that Aunt Greta is inviting half of your second cousins you haven't talked to in 3 years.
Right.
So that's when you can be enlisting the power players. Like, if there's one person who influences your family, you can be like, hey, please don't. Because each person costs money.
Yeah, right. And that's sometimes what people don't understand. I think even if you're too far removed from the wedding world, you forget that there are caterers who want RSVPs. There's venues who need RSVPs. I have an awful tickle.
Danielle's dying. I'm sorry, guys.
Oh my God. I get so worked up about plus ones.
Oh my God. It's awful.
I might need to grab a cough drop.
Do it.
Oh, they're nowhere nearby. I think I'm good now.
Okay.
Ooh, that one like got me right in the zinger. I'll start that part over again just so that we have a so that I have an almost cleaner thought. What was I saying? I was talking about
uninvited
that
guests.
Family. Yeah, family just
and yeah, people who are removed from the wedding industry don't understand that they cost money.
Yeah. And I think what it comes down to is that sometimes our loved ones, and especially those that are of different generations that are not directly in the wedding industry and in the wedding world right now, they kind of forget or don't even know that you as a couple need to be providing your caterer, your venue, all of these people floor plans and guest counts and all this stuff. And sometimes adding a person or 2 or 4 or 10 affects a whole lot of things, from your food, your drink, your rentals, your linens, your tables, your chairs, your florals, all of the things that shifts everything. So while to some person it's like, it's just one other person, what's the big deal? Well, it kind of is a big deal because you've planned around that person not being there. That person causes a major shift in it all. So, and that's easy to let that throw you into a tizzy. You know what I mean? That's one of those things that you're like, now what do we do?
Right. Yeah.
Like Berlyn said,
and that's
no
where having
is
a planner. That's
Yes.
where having a planner kicks in, because then when you say, hey, this happened, we can tell you all of the places that it's going to affect. Because if you haven't done weddings before, you probably didn't think about the fact that, your shuttle is affected by that, or we can't fit an extra table in your space or something along those lines. So it is a snowball effect. And even you planning the wedding might not know exactly how far. It's the butterfly effect. That's what it is? The butterfly effect, where like it flaps its wings and it affects everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Plus
so
butterflies are
definitely
just cute.
Yeah,
Did you ever do, this is a little side tangent, did you ever do one of those butterfly releases at a wedding?
I have heard horror stories about those, so I won't, because one, I'm terrified of butterflies. Like I actually hate them. Like I think they're beautiful, but when we go into those like big rooms that they're in the atriums, it's my worst nightmare. I really don't like them.
Oh my goodness. I'm like sweating weird. For you now. Yeah. No. So for our ringers out there, if you're considering doing this, like Berlyn said, don't do it. Trust me, just don't do it. I've only seen it. Excuse me. I've only seen it ever done once. And basically what happens is as soon as they're open up, they're freeze dried. And when you open them up, most of them are dead. You kind of have to like dump the thing out. It is just all sorts of terrible animal, not greatness. Those butterflies end up getting eaten almost immediately. It is a truly terrible
with the
thing.
Ecosystem.
Yeah. So yeah, if anybody's thinking of that, please don't. So
I heard. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I heard about one wedding once where apparently they had them in these cute, beautiful little envelopes, and they were white, and they set them on the white chairs for the ceremony so that guests could, get their envelope for their butterfly release. Well, the white envelopes on the white chairs were not visible to the guests, and the guests sat on the butterflies.
Oh my goodness.
So maybe we don't do that.
Oh, those poor butterflies.
Oh my God.
Oh, and they were probably out in the hot sun. Oh,
it's just if ringers don't trust us when we say.
All right. All right. So let's talk about sort of how we can enforce the help of others to kind of help us reinforce the boundaries that we're trying to set.
Well, I mean, obviously the power players. So there's always like that one aunt or the grandma who's like the matriarch of the family and like makes the decisions, or the patriarch of the family. Somebody who is a key player that everybody else kind of falls in line behind them. So if at all humanly possible, get them on your side. And when you're going into things, they'll stand arm in arm with you and fight for what you want if you make a good argument. And if they're on your side, the rest of the family's going to fall in line. So I definitely, it comes back to having the conversation early and often, and, establishing what you want and those boundaries early so that people know what they're fighting for you.
100%. And I think if you can sort of find a way to show why it's beneficial to them, why you want the thing, then they're all the more going to be in your court and stand up for you and have your back when you need them to, right? And it comes down to that communication of not just saying, no, we're not having kids at our wedding, but maybe giving a slight explanation. Not to say that everybody deserves the explanation, but it certainly comes from a place of, like Berlyn said, compassion and just keeping that open heart that you will want to treat people how you would want to be treated in that situation, right? Nobody
Absolutely.
wants to feel like a big old turd. They want to feel like you understand and you hear them, but you still want them to respect what you want as well.
Plus family. Oh my God. They just want to help. They want a job. And so if you can give them a job, they will be so excited to do it for you. If someone comes to you and says, what can I do? How can I help? Then you can say, we're really focusing on this boundary right now. Like, we're trying to communicate that we're not having kids in like the nicest way humanly possible. So if you talk to anybody about the wedding, you can just passively mention that, you're so excited for the adults only reception. And then, if they ask any further questions, you'll have the answer, and you'll be really helping us out by communicating that message. And most of the time people feel honored that you've bestowed this upon them, and they're happy to help you.
Right. That's so true. Everybody just wants to help. That's really what it comes down to. I know you as a planner, you have to do this as well, where if somebody comes to you on the wedding day where like you can tell they just like need a job, you just give them little tiny pointless probably things for them to do just so that they feel busy but ultimately don't feel responsible for any major thing that needs to be happening, right? Do you ever do that?
I do. Confession, right? Yes.
Yeah. But like from a good place, right? Sometimes there's personality. I would be this personality. If I had a kid who is getting married, oh my God, you need to give me a job. There's no way I'm just going to be able to sit on my hands all day as a parent and not do something. So bless your heart. Anyway, let's switch gears a little bit, because I think there's also boundaries that sometimes need to be set with your team of wedding vendors and the creative professionals that you've hired to kind of work with you. And not all of the vendors that are out there in this world are super on the up and up or super great. There's some not so great people out there doing business. And I think it's really important that in the same way that you're setting your boundaries for yourselves and with your family and your guests, I think it's also good to get on the same page with each other and set those boundaries with your vendors as well. And what I mean by this is those times where your vendor is trying to upsell you on something to that you really honestly don't need, don't want, and could probably care less about, right?
Absolutely.
So I've seen it before, and not to use this as an example, but literally just as an example, if a DJ who you love and you're so excited to just pump some good jams for you is trying to sell you on the uplighting, the laser beams, the light up dance floor, the dancing on a cloud, the pyrotechnics, kind of all of the things that you just want everybody to maybe dance and have a great time, it's okay to politely decline and say like, hey, that sounds great, but we're good if they don't align with your priorities, right? It is okay to say no to vendors who are trying to upsell you on things. Now, that doesn't mean to say no when they're trying to help you and guide you and make sure that you're planning a day that's really realistic and good to go. But when it comes to these extra things, I think I see a lot of times where couples are kind of strong-armed into an upsell or made to feel like, oh, well, if you don't have, fireworks going off as your first dance is happening, then really, I mean, is it a wedding? And I hate that, right?
The answer is yes, it is a wedding, and get off my back, because it might not be in your budget, or you might just not want it. Like maybe you don't like butterflies and you don't want them at your wedding, and that's totally fine. So they need to just get on board with that, and no is a complete sentence.
Right. But you have our permission ringers to, like I said, stand up for yourself and just decline whatever upgraded thing that they're potentially offering you, because it can be so easy. It is why so many couples end up blowing right out their budget, because it becomes so easy to kind of see all the options and see all the shiny objects and go, well, our wedding probably would be better if there was laser beams going throughout the space. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe it'll be a worse situation for your photographer.
But so on to Danielle's point, like she said, if they are giving you good, solid education as to why you should be doing something, please listen to their expertise. Because if somebody's coming in and selling you uplighting and selling you the laser show, those aren't essentials that your guests need for comfort or that you need for comfort. But if someone says, hey, you have 400 people in a barn with no indoor plumbing, we need restrooms, that is something you need to spend money on. So you have to use your best judgment. And even if you say, oh, well, there's one bathroom inside. No. Please, from experience, dear God, please listen. And so if someone's really making like a solid argument and it's something that, seems expensive or seems extravagant, and you're like, well, my family will be fine dealing with it. There are some things on the wedding day that are just not worth compromising. And 100%. That is one of them.
Bathrooms is so one of them. OMG.
Yeah. Bathrooms, like, seating, like just overall guest comfort stuff. That's like basic things. Like you want to have water available and like, that kind of stuff. So anything like that someone's recommending, like take into account whether it's an essential, is it a want, or is it a need? And if it's a need for the guest experience, then I would highly suggest you invest in it.
Right. And honestly, to like back the steps up further, this all comes down to interviewing and choosing to work with wedding pros that you trust, that are going to have your best interest at play, and that you feel good working with. Because the people that you get red flags from, or the ones that you go, I don't know, they felt like a little bit like a shyster, those are the ones that are going to upsell you on, the many extra hors d'oeuvres that you don't need for your 50-person wedding and all those things. So that's where it comes down to choosing those people that you trust, that are going to guide you through the process in a way that feels really good to you. Because there are definitely times where I've said to my couples, hey, you are doing so great on, because I always go back to the 4 fundamentals of kind of what you need for a good event. It's good food, good drinks, good entertainment, and comfort. That's what those 4 things guests need. And honestly, food and drink could probably get lumped into one, but that's a whole other story. So if you hit on those 4 things, you're winning, right? But then you have to find ways that if you have room in the budget, you can say, okay, what's a unique way we can hit on this? Or what's a way that's maybe unexpected? Or what's a way that really reflects us as a couple that we can give our guests this interesting experience? Then that's where you can say like, hey, we have a little bit extra room. Is there some sort of like cool entertainment thing we can do during our cocktail hour that maybe guests won't be expecting or they haven't seen before? That's where me as a planner steps in and is like, yes, I've got so many ideas. Let's talk through them, because they're specifically asking for it, right? But then if I give you my like list of 10 ideas and you go, yeah, none of those really spoke to me. Okay, great. Like totally fine. You're not hurting people's feelings by saying no, thank you.
Yes.
You hear them out. You say no, thank you. If you do hurt their feelings, it's more on them than it is on you.
Mm-hmm.
Moral of the story. So to wrap up this episode, I want to kind of go into what to do when someone kind of breaks a boundary. So if someone just kind of pushes and steps right on through, do you have any tips or advice for how a couple should kind of proceed from there?
We've talked about it a lot, but if someone's breaking it, I mean, we really have, but if someone's breaking a boundary, there's probably a reason. It's probably not just because they're a jerk, well, most of the time it's not just because they're a jerk, but most of the time. And there's probably a reason. Either they feel entitled, they feel left out, they're, trying to be included, they want someone else to be included, or they're pushing for someone else's wants and needs. So you always want to meet that with empathy, I think, and just try and see where they're coming from and why this is such a huge motivator for them. And once you know what's motivating them, you know how to respond. So if you, at that point, if someone's pushing for a +1 and it's because they know literally no one at your wedding and they're going to be by themselves at a table the whole time, you can offer empathy and, say, I'm really sorry. We hope you're going to have a great time anyway. And then if you feel so inclined, offer an accommodation. So if you do want to at that point say, you know what, we took a second look at the guest list. It's cool. Bring a +1. We want you to be there. We want you to be comfortable. That's totally fine. Mm-hmm. If someone says, we really can't come unless we have our kids, and this is the only time the whole family is going to be together, but you don't want them to have the kids at the wedding, offer a babysitting service or consider offering a babysitting service, or make recommendations of nannies in the area that will service in the hotel. So, try and you can help find solutions to those problems if you want to, mm-hmm. but ultimately, like Danielle said, you can't control other people's reactions or actions. The only thing you can do is control yourself.
Right. And it comes down to you don't have to put out every fire. You don't have to solve everyone's problem, right? As much as I think as human beings, we are designed to kind of crave solutions, or at least I know I am, but maybe that's just my personality type. So it's important to remember that you can handle it up until a certain point, but sometimes someone is just going to take it much farther and they're just going to take it and then it's their fire to kind of put out. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to kind of just, I think, Berlyn, you said this, to just make peace with the outcome. Whatever will be, will be. Is that a Beatles song?
What will be, will be. I think it's Doris Day.
Really?
Yeah,
I love
do.
Doris Day.
I think it's Doris Day. But yeah, it's definitely that. Like, at a certain point, it's the pick your battles thing and decide whether or not what they're fighting for is even important to you.
It's que sera, sera, whatever will be, Doris Day. You're totally right.
Yeah.
I knew that.
I love me some old movies. It's cool. I'm a little bit of a movie buff.
The only Doris Day movie that I know of off the top of my head is Pillow Talk. Me and my Nana watched Pillow Talk a whole lot when I was little. And I would think if I watched it now, I would find it to probably be very inappropriate that I watched it at such a young age.
But oh my gosh, your Nana now, since I listened to the Put a Ring on It podcast, and one of my favorite songs at all weddings is always
I Want to Dance
with Somebody. And now that I've heard that, every time I hear that, I think about you and your Nana, and I love it. It brings me such happiness and joy.
There is always like happy tears streaming from my face when I hear that song at a wedding. I mean, not to the point where it ain't cute. No, it's definitely not cute. By that point in the night, it ain't cute no more. But
no, nobody's cute by that point in the night.
it's always a really nice reminder that like she's kind of hanging out with me and having a really good time, and it's a good time. Berlyn's talking about episode 72, where we talked about some of our amazing and craziest moments that have ever happened at a wedding. So. Good stuff. Okay, so anything else you want to share before we wrap up this episode?
I'm trying to think. I just stay strong, ringers. Like, wedding planning is rough. It is rough, and it absolutely stinks sometimes. And if you don't hit a point where you're like, yeah, elopement sounds great, like you're not getting married. And, right? So just give yourself some grace and understand that for all the boundaries you're going to set, there's going to be somebody who pushes them. And so just breathe in, breathe out, and you will make it through this. And it will be, I promise, it will be the best day of your life because you're starting a whole new adventure with your best friend. And that's how it should be. So
Exactly.
stay strong.
Oh, such good advice. Berlyn, where can people find you when they want to learn more about you? Where are all the things?
So my website is berlyndesign.com.
Ooh, spell that. Wait, spell Berlyn.
Ooh, yeah. I'm all like fancy and whatnot. It's BERLYN design, DESIGN.com. And the same at Instagram, Berlyn Design. And you can find me on Facebook as well at Berlyn Events and Design Limited.
Awesome. And Berlyn is one of those people on Instagram. She shares the pretty, but she also shares the real and the real good advice. So she is a good person to be following, even if you're not in her area. She just puts out good stuff and good juju, man. So Berlyn, I'm so happy you joined us on today's episode. Thank you so much. I think this was awesome.
Thank you so much for having me, Danielle. It was awesome. I had a great time. We had a great time on popping my podcast cherry.
Well, you know.